what's up guys? It's Alec from Cichlid Bros.
I'm Quinn.
And I'm Troy.
I made the trip from St. Louis to visit my brother Troy to get some equipment, so I figured we'd get all the Cichlid Bros together and give you guys a video.
It's definitely going to be an interesting video. We're going to talk about our history and our evolution of how we started Cichlid Bros and where we are today. We get asked this question a lot, so we figured we'd go ahead and make it into one video.
So,
let's dive right in.
So taking it all the way back to our childhood, that was when we really first got our introduction into aquariums. Our dad had a 40-gallon tank with a chocolate cichlid. We loved that fish, and I think that started us on our path towards keeping cichlids primarily. I think we had an angelfish in that tank at one point, and it really sparked our interest, but we didn't really get into keeping aquariums to this capacity or at this level until about 5 years ago. We had a few tanks in college, but nothing as big as we currently keep today. So for Cichlid Bros, it really started with Quinn in his classroom inheriting a tank and a Jack Dempsey. Quinn, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so it's a pretty interesting story. I got hired over at my high school 5 years ago. So about 4.5 years ago, I inherited a 20-gallon long aquarium with one Jack Dempsey in it. This is a juvenile Jack Dempsey and very, very dirty water. You can tell that the tank has been running for a long time, but it had not been really touched in months, probably over the entire summer. It's actually a very sad story that the previous teacher that had the tank unfortunately suddenly passed away, and I was actually hired to be the biology teacher replacement, and I inherited that teacher's tank. Basically, that started my cichlid journey, where I really worked to clean that tank up, provide a really good aquarium for that Jack Dempsey, and really started to do a ton of research about cichlids in general, Jack Dempseys, and really got to make that tank look pretty good. And then started to do some more upgrades. After talking with Troy and Alec, they really started to get into it some more, and kind of just had the idea of, let's dive right into this thing.
I understood that reference.
So right around the time that Quinn inherited his Jack Dempsey, I was on my second community tank. I had a 15-gallon. I had just bought a 10-gallon for my 2-year-old son for his bedroom as kind of a nightlight situation. And through that whole process, I was really starting to wish I was into cichlids and having bigger tanks so I could get those bigger fish. And right about that time is when Quinn inherited that Jack Dempsey, and I got so jealous. I'm like, man, we gotta make this happen. We gotta start owning some cichlids. So I started immediately scheming to get a bigger tank and start owning some cichlids. And I just really started researching like crazy and throwing ideas off of Troy and Quinn all the time. We had our kind of brothers group chat where we were talking about it all the time. And next thing you know, Troy's like, all right, I'm in.
So at that point, you got a 55-gallon and Boona tank, right?
Yep.
And so right when you got that 55-gallon tank and Quinn had the Jack Dempsey and I was the only brother left out, I figured I had to get a tank myself. So I actually got a 38-gallon aquarium, which at the time I thought was a massive tank, and I couldn't wait to keep these huge cichlids in it. Pretty naive thinking that it was going to hold fish of that size, but I really didn't know any better at that point. This is 5 years ago. There are things that I was still learning, like water chemistry, how to keep cichlids in general.
Probably decor as well.
Yeah, I had the ancient ruins decor in my tank, which again, some people like, and if you do, go for it, but
I had the scuba diver bubbler.
Yeah, and luckily we never had the rainbow gravel.
Yeah, I think we kind of just naturally kind of levitated to more of the natural scape to try to make our aquariums the most natural looking environment possible for the cichlids.
It's kind of like we crammed a whole bunch of fish keeping experience into a short amount of time, where we kind of started out with the unnatural decor and we very quickly moved toward.
And if you go back to the first kind of phase of my 20 long improvement with my Jack Dempsey, I had the volcano with the light bubbler. I think I even had a SpongeBob pineapple in there as well. But I think we all kind of went through that phase, and then graduated out of it.
I even had some pink gravel at one time with my community tank, so I'm not going to talk about that though.
But yeah, not only are you changing it up to more natural aquascapes, but also as we were learning about the proper way of keeping some of these fish, that's where our tank sizes grew. And as we were researching and wanting to keep more and more fish, that's our number of aquariums grew. So I started with that 38-gallon tank, but shortly after that, I bought my first 75-gallon aquarium, and I started putting some South American cichlids in there. After dealing with some of your typical diseases and outbreaks of ick and just learning some of those issues along the way, I kind of picked it up fast and started learning on the fly, and eventually that tank progressed to looking pretty good. But I always had the itch of getting bigger and bigger tanks. At that time I was in an apartment in Chicago, so there wasn't a ton of room for tanks, and I was on the second floor, so I couldn't get anything bigger than a 75 probably. But once I moved to the burbs, I really had the space for the bigger aquariums. And that's whenever I got my 180-gallon aquarium, which was a big point for the channel itself.
At that beginning stage, Quinn had the 20 long, I had a 55-gallon with Mbuna, Troy had 38-gallon kind of Central American like Firemouth, Jack Dempsey and some things like that. And we were just constantly sending Snapchats and group pictures to each other because like we wanted to share pictures, we wanted to share our fish with other people, and we were the only ones that really cared about it. Nobody else in our family or our friends were into that type of thing. And then we noticed on Instagram there was kind of a community of people who would post pictures of their fish, and so I'm like, I'm gonna create an Instagram channel. I had no idea what to call it, so I just did my initials, ADH Mbuna, and then I think you guys created one, and then that's when Quinn had the genius idea of Cichlid Bros. I'm like, dang, that's a sweet name.
Well, at that point, you started the ADH and Mbuna.
Yeah.
We saw that it actually got some traction and some likes, and we're like, hey, we kind of want to post our own aquariums. And then instead of me and Quinn posting separately, we're like, let's do Cichlid Bros. And then shortly after that, we're like, let's just combine it, all three of us. And then Alex stopped posting on that specific page, and that's when Cichlid Bros Instagram started, and that was probably 4 years ago.
At least, yeah, 4 years ago.
Yeah, so whenever we hit the big time, just I want everyone to remember, I created the name Cichlid Bros. I designed the logo on a free logo generator that I found on Google, and had a little bit of modification since then. But it is kind of crazy looking back on it that we were kind of separate and then combined, and the rest is history.
It's kind of like Quinn was like the creative genius.
My boy's wicked smart.
And me and Troy were kind of like the research nerds. I mean, every YouTube channel that had to do with fish, we had watched every video numerous times, and we just could not get enough of that research. And next thing you know, we had a pretty big Instagram following, and we're like, man, I kind of want to do videos to show our fish. And at the time, I don't think Instagram did videos, so we're like, well, what if we just did a YouTube channel? I think Troy brought that up, and me and Quinn were like, oh, I don't know about that. I don't know if we can do that.
If I remember correctly, I think Troy made a video just kind of trying it out and see how it was.
It was hilarious.
It was pretty bad.
Hey YouTube, welcome back to the second video from Cichlid Bros.
Hey, our first video, don't go watch it, please. It's bad.
Yeah, we have not really had a video on YouTube go viral, but if you guys can make that one go viral, that'd be amazing.
And I think Troy sold us on doing YouTube by saying, like, you don't have to be in it, just be behind the camera, just show your tanks.
Yeah.
You know? And then now it's always like, you need to be in the video more.
I think when we started off, Troy was pretending to be me. Like one of his videos in my classroom, he's like, yeah, this is my aquariums in my classroom. Because at that time, I was not ready to be on YouTube.
So we're doing the dang thing or what?
You can see Quinn's a big help here. Didn't even remember his Cichlid Bros shirt.
20 hours later.
What would you say you do here?
Summer, which makes me happy.
I think that about covers it.
Nope. Oh! Don't forget to that.
We had to really pump Quinn up to get the confidence to be on camera or even talk on camera.
So that timeline about 4 years ago is when we started Instagram, and we got some traction. I believe the traction we were getting was mostly because of your Jack Dempsey, because that Jack Dempsey that Quinn saved ended up coloring up and being just a beautiful Jack Dempsey. So it got a lot of likes and traction, so our followers grew on Instagram, and we realized that we had something here in terms of a channel, in terms of content that we wanted to make, and that's when the videos started to come. And then looking at it on YouTube and seeing some other great channels out there, we were like, we have something unique to offer. We have a lot of aquariums and collective experience that was starting to grow. So we started posting a YouTube video once per week, and that slowly started to grow as well.
So then we started to try to develop what exactly our niche was. One thing was that we had the relationship and the shared hobby between three brothers, which was unique, but also things like Quinn is a biology teacher and all of his tanks are in his classroom, which the students love, and people love imagining being in Quinn's class as a student and experiencing that, and that was really awesome. And just the fact that we were able to combine all of our aquarium knowledge, so it's slightly educational but also slightly kind of sharing our experiences with you as well. And we're not going to pretend to be lifelong hobbyists with 50 fish tanks in our basement growing up or anything like that, but I think we've crammed a lot of experience and knowledge in the last 5 years to share with you, right or wrong, our opinions and what we've seen and learned, but also take you along the journey with us, because the journey has come quite a long way from the 20 long, 55 and 38 gallon, so to where we are today.
Yep. We had the 20-gallon long in Quinn's classroom, the 55 and the 38-gallon tanks for me and Alec. So then, Quinn, what did you do next?
Yeah, so after saving this Jack Dempsey and, as we said, doing a ton of research on cichlids and Jack Dempseys, I knew this 20 long was just not going to be big enough long term for the Jack Dempsey. It was fine at first just because it was still a juvenile, but I knew I was going to need a bigger tank. So got the tape measure out. I was trying to measure out any type of table space I had on my lab tables in my classroom, and luckily it's a pretty great space for a lot of aquariums.
Very sturdy too.
It is very, it's steel, very sturdy tables there. So I got a 29 gallon out of another teacher's storage room that I moved the Jack Dempsey in, got a couple convicts to go with it, and then I think some giant Danios just to give some activity to the tank. And then spring of that year, so my first year teaching, I got my first 75 gallon, which I thought was about as large as a swimming pool. It was huge. And got to set all that up, which was really, really fun. It's really the first big aquarium I ever got to set up, and got to kind of show Alec and Troy the process with that, and just a really rewarding process. So I moved the Jack Dempsey, the two convicts, the giant Danios, and I ended up getting Troy's Green Terror and moving it into that 75 gallon too. So that Green Terror, who we nicknamed Joker, was definitely a channel favorite. Unfortunately passed away this past year, but I was really proud of that tank, and it was just a really good Central and South American setup, and was very impressed with how well the Green Terror and Jack Dempsey colored up.
It was an awesome tank, and not a lot of people have the success of that mix of fish, and especially like a 75 gallon tank, and it was just awesome.
Yeah, and I think to go along with that, whenever people are speaking in absolutes in the fish hobby world, there's a lot of variables that go into it, where if a Jack Dempsey, I mean, is named after a boxer to show the aggression, I've seen some Jack Dempseys that are super aggressive. Mine is not very aggressive at all. The Green Terror was not very aggressive at all. I've had firemouths that are not very aggressive. The current firemouth I have right now is one of the most aggressive fish I've ever had. So it's kind of just trial and error, see what works for you, see what doesn't. So overall, I thought the 75 gallon was kind of my end game with my aquariums. I did end up adding another fish. It is a Salvini cichlid, probably the most beautiful fish I've owned, but also probably the most aggressive I've owned, unfortunately. And it was messing up the substrate a lot, which was not of my liking, so I did have to make a change with that, and then started to think about some future tank plans to kind of expand the classroom.
So at this point we had full-blown MTS, multiple tank syndrome, and not to be outdone, Troy wanted to kind of challenge for the most gallons in the Cichlid Bros.
Yeah, right around this time was when I moved to the suburbs and had that expanded space to work within. So my basement has a lot of room for tanks, as you've seen on the channel. At that point, I ordered my 180 gallon acrylic aquarium. I went with acrylic because it was the biggest tank we could fit down the stairs, and it's lighter than glass when it's empty, so that was just easier to get it down.
Lighter?
I appreciate that, actually, after trying to get your 150 down here.
Yeah, when he says lighter, it was still pretty heavy. So.
Yeah, and the tank stands are always way heavier than you expect. So.
Oh, yeah. So at this point, Troy started out with a 38 gallon, moved up to a 75 gallon for what, about a year? it before we moved out here and got the 180 gallon. And now we're thinking we're pretty big time. We got the 180. You still had your 75. Quinn had his 75. Still had his 20 and 29. We kept encouraging Quinn to get more and more tanks at that point. And he's just like, all right, sounds good. And meanwhile, I keep researching. I develop a love for specifically African cichlids. And so I kind of wanted that to be my niche within the Cichlid Bros, the more, the African side, because they like the New World, Central and South American. The more research I did, the more I got into predator haps. One of my favorite channels was Adam C, and he had an awesome predator hap tank, and I just fell in love with a lot of specific fish like the Aristochromis christii, the Malawi hawk, and I'm like, I gotta get that. What's the smallest tank that I can get and still be able to have predator haps? Because I didn't want to make my wife upset with crowding my entire basement with massive fish tanks. So I kind of ran it by her. I'm like, hey, what would you think if I got a tank about twice the size of my current one, my 55 gallon? She's just like, all right. So at that point, I knew I was going to switch from Mbuna to predator haps and go with a 125 gallon. And I thought that I would definitely be done at that point. I'm like, there's no reason that I need to go any bigger than 125. And so I bought a bunch of like 1 to 2 inch predator haps for my 125. We made a big video setting it all up, and I was so proud. We got the 180, the 125.
And you had the 55 gallon tank that you actually gave to Quinn to continue building out his classroom.
Yeah, so Alec didn't really have a plan for the 55, and me with all the space in the classroom.
Look at all this floor space. So much. You do aerobics in here. So many activities.
So put it in the back of the car. On that Monday morning, brought it into my classroom, so I had a brand new 55 gallon aquarium with tons of possibilities, or endless possibilities for what I could put in it. I actually had already purchased a tiny flower horn at a Pet Supply Plus. It was kind of just a purchase on a whim, and it was just growing out in the 29 gallon. So flower horns grow up to be really big fish, so I threw that in the 55. Got to watch that flower horn grow. It did end up being a short body flower horn, and it is a female, so it doesn't have the big hump. So that's still actually in the 55 gallon aquarium in my classroom right now. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, it might not be as beautiful as some of the show flower horns, but that's kind of part of Felix's charm.
Right. So I am a little disappointed on the appearance of Felix, but the personality is unmistakably awesome. It always interacts with my students, and you can feed it with your hands. Felix is an awesome fish.
All right, so we had been at this for a couple years now. We had gotten some experience and grown our tanks. Our social media channels were starting to become more legit, where we knew the types of content we wanted to make. We're getting better about editing, getting more video content out there more frequently, and that's when we got in contact with custom aquariums, which really accelerated our growth, not only with our personal aquariums, but what we could do on the channel. So that leads me to Quinn's next tank.
So Custom Aquariums was really excited to work with us, as were we. They agreed to make me a 110 gallon aquarium, which is a 5 foot long, which is basically the biggest tank I can fit on the biggest lab table I have in my classroom. Really one of the cool parts, I would say, of the past 4 to 5 years in this hobby is giving a tour of Custom Aquariums and seeing how these awesome aquariums are built. I thought that was a really rewarding part of the process, and it's cool. We drove up to Wisconsin. It was around this time a couple years ago, and got to do the tour, and then put the 110 gallon in the back of my car, and now I had a new awesome huge aquarium in my classroom that I moved all the 75 inhabitants in and got to set that up. So that was a really cool time.
So at that point you had the new 110 gallon custom aquarium, you had the 75 gallon that you set back up, you had the 55 gallon, and you still had that 20 gallon from all the way back.
And the 29.
So at this point you had a legit fish room in your classroom.
It was a lot.
Yeah. So getting that 110 gallon tank and touring custom aquariums and seeing how awesome those aquariums are when they're being built, that really got our wheels turning, with me and Alec both wanting one of our own.
But then something unexpected happened.
Honored, and excited to be part of the Bulls organization.
To win it!
You know what I didn't know about Billy Donovan? He loves fish. He's got a fish tank. The Cichlid brothers in Chicago built him a fish tank. And his favorite fish in the fish tank, Jack Dempsey.
Wow, so here is the YouTube video with Chicago Bulls head coach Billy Donovan.
Oh, here we go.
And this is a YouTube video of the setup for the 180-gallon custom Cichlid aquarium. With the company is Cichlid Brothers.
So we are in the Chicagoland area. Alec lives in St. Louis, but Quinn and I are in Chicago. And so we've been Chicago sports fans our whole lives. And it was really special when the head coach of the Chicago Bulls, Billy Donovan, reached out to us after finding us on YouTube, seeing that we're relatively normal guys, and he wanted help setting up his own aquarium.
Yeah, relatively normal. That's me. I don't know about Troy and Alec, but yeah, that was a crazy moment when me and Troy went over there. It was actually on Super Bowl Sunday a couple years ago, and he opened the door, and we realized we were not getting catfish. That was a good thing. Crazy Billy grew up with cichlids, a lot of convict cichlids and other New World cichlids, and saw that we fit his niche, and he wanted a tank of his own. So we did some consultation for him. Ended up agreeing that a 180-gallon custom aquarium was the best option up in his third floor office. And he gave us the keys to the car to go ahead and get that ordered and order all the decor. That led us up about 2 months later to the big setup day.
So after the planning process was complete, a couple months later it was delivered to my house, we unboxed it, and then we got it onto the U-Haul and over to Billy's. With the help of some family and friends, we got it up to the third floor of his home and got everything set up all in one day. The fish came a couple weeks later and everything turned out great.
So for those of you that have never seen Troy nervous, I don't think Troy slept for the week before that with the worry that we were not going to be able to fit the aquarium into the elevator, and we were going to have to carry it up 3 flights of skinny stairs.
In Troy's defense, that would have sucked.
It would have.
And I was also worried about cracking the tank or just anything going wrong as we were getting the tank up into his house.
Maybe filling it up and it falling through all 3 stories of his house.
Yeah, so one important aspect of that video is we had to confirm with the engineer of his building that it was going to be able to hold the weight of this 2,000-gallon or 2,000-pound aquarium.
So overall, that was just such an awesome day. Billy Donovan was the nicest guy ever. Damian Cotter was over there too, an assistant coach for the Bulls that loves aquariums. To have the help of some of our closest family and friends was also really rewarding. There was a slight scare that we were not going to be able to hook the python up to fill up the aquarium. So me and Cichlid bro-in-law Rob had to run to Home Depot and save the day. And luckily,
as always,
we got it all set up. So that was definitely one of the cool days to be a part of the Cichlid Bros. This time period also kind of coincided with us just getting better at the whole content creation thing. Troy started to become really good at editing. We became a lot more official with good intros, good animations, good logos, all that good stuff. That I think it was kind of all at the right time for us to really dive right in.
Nice.
For us to really dive in to this channel.
Dude, your references are out of control. Everyone knows that.
And I think another part of the timing that was great was that I was really struggling in my corporate job in terms of stress and just hating what I was doing day to day. And I saw this as a potential avenue of a full-time gig down the line. So putting in that extra effort was a means to an end for me of something that could be a full-time gig, something I love to do, and be doing something that I didn't see as a job for my full-time career. So you may have noticed in the last 3 or 4 months that we posted a lot more content recently, and that's because I put in my 2 weeks notice and took this gig full-time. Alec and Quinn, both being teachers and coaches and loving what they do, they could kind of be the talent, kind of keep their own aquariums, whereas I could manage the channel, the editing, and all of that. So it was all coming together all around this time.
Another thing that was happening around that time was we were trying to expand the types of fish and fish tanks that we were keeping. We were experimenting with nano tanks, planet tanks, shrimp tanks, saltwater reef tanks, as much different kinds of content that we could bring you, we were trying to do. And there was a lot of great experiences and a lot of things that we learned that we still use to this day, but the more we expanded, it seemed like the more our desires were brought back to our initial focus, and that was big cichlid tanks.
Yep, at one point we each had a saltwater tank. I had a 48-gallon tank with a sump. That was the first time I had plumbed a sump. Quinn had a really nice 20-gallon water box. Alec had a 20-gallon
Peninsula.
There you go. And we love the saltwater tanks, but like Alex said, we just wanted to go back to cichlids since there are so many that we wanted to keep. So the realization that we had a lot of cichlids we wanted to keep really forged our path forward for the last year, where we have had a lot of new aquarium setups. I got a 150-gallon custom aquarium, which is South American cichlids. I got that last March. Alec got his 220-gallon custom aquarium, which we set up in the summer. And then we set up 2 new aquariums for Quinn in his classroom, and that all happened within the last 8 months.
I have a lot of students be like, is it true that your brothers have like the shed aquarium in their basement? I'm like, basically.
Largest Cichlid Bros tank right here.
How neat is that?
And on top of that, I started to expand my fish room, which is really just a storage area of my basement, just so I could have more fish and expand the projects that I'm doing.
So after Troy expanded his fish room, I decided to start breaking down my nano aquariums and start gearing my basement fish room toward more big cichlid tanks, starting with a 40 breeder that I just set up, growing out some Mbuna as I wait for my new custom aquarium to arrive in probably the next 8 to 10 weeks. And so now I have a 220 gallon, I have a 40 breeder, and a shrimp tank. So Quinn, how many do you have?
I have 6 aquariums currently set up in my classroom. So I got the 110, 75, 75, 90, 55, and still got the 29 going with some old community fish there. The 20 long is still in my classroom. It is the OG tank. It is dry at this point, but it still kind of holds a special place in my heart.
I think we got to set that thing back up again.
It might need to.
So going forward, me and Troy are waiting for our next custom aquariums to be delivered, and they're going to be some of our best content yet.
Can't wait!
On top of that, we're really excited to kind of expand our content, and we really want to travel the country and show you some of the coolest aquarium content out there.
Not only are we going to show all these updates to our home aquariums and show as much as we possibly can of the aquarium hobby, anything that's cool or interesting we want to bring to you.
All while sticking to our roots and providing the best cichlid content possible for you guys. We're really excited about what the future is going to hold.
So I hope you enjoyed hearing our background and the history, the evolution of Cichlid Bros. We have a lot of exciting things to come that I can't wait to show you.
So as always, thanks for watching.
We'll see you next time.